Organized to come here and speak to you. And when I say organized to come here to speak to you, everyone who you are going to hear from has been mobilized in a short amount of time and said, you know what, I'm going to take time out of my schedule. I had this schedule with my family because it's a long weekend, but I need to be here. And this is a good time for me to hear from maybe two people as to why was it important for you to be here today. Give me a hand if you want to tell me why it was important for you to be here today.
It's really important to act, not just speak. So I'm speaking right now, but I'm here acting. My family, we've come over together. We've come from north central Florida. We drove several hours to get here. And we're going to continue to do this. Yes, we had other things planned today, but when we saw that this was happening and that David Jolly was going to be here, who we've started to follow and learn more about, we've seen him in several other town halls, and he's been really amazing and inspiring. So I'm really thankful that everyone is here today.
All right. I see one more hand. I don't want to take away from the speakers, but I'm going to tell you something I heard. I heard that national politics is local politics. But in the state of Florida, local politics means maybe I have to move around the state with the right momentum. Maybe I can't just stay in my neighborhood, because if I really want my state to be where it needs to be, I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to move around. I'm going to have to move where action is. I saw this hand here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brant Robinson. I'm finishing my 28th year teaching history here in Florida, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be here, and thank you so much for making this space for us. I'm here because there is a movement taking hold in our country, and I know you know that. And what's critical is that we continue to reach those fellow citizens, and I mean this with tremendous respect, who are ambivalent. They've been sitting on the sidelines. They're disillusioned, they're disheartened, or maybe experiencing despair, and when they see people like us being visible, they take that next step, and we have to continue that momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we have the head of the house, the pastor of this house. If this is the first time you've been to this church, let's hear from the person, the shepherd who's leading us all. Thank you today.
I'm so grateful you're all here. Welcome. My name is Pastor Andy. My pronouns are he, him, his. First, the important things, the bathrooms. We have a female bathroom that way, men's room that way, and then gender-neutral bathrooms down that hall. Also, if you want to make sure more people hear this, go on to Allendale UMC's Facebook, and you can share the live stream. You can also go back or share it when you get home with your friends. And so that'll be an important way to help make this message go even further. My congregation here at Allendale years ago wrote a welcome statement to make sure that when anyone was gathered here, they knew that they were beloved and welcome. And in part, it reads, whatever your race, ethnicity, economic situation, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, background or belief, age or condition of ableness, whether single or partnered, you are God's beloved and are welcome here. And so they need to extend that word of welcome to you. Now, since the beginning of this administration, Allendale, along with churches all over the country, have been lighting this candle surrounded by barbed wire. It's a candle modeled after one in South Africa that was lit every week during apartheid. The candle represents the light shining even in the midst of barbed wire policies that wrap tighter on the marginalized each day. We gather today not as passive observers to policy, but as people who see clearly the difference between leadership and exploitation, between governance and greed. Because when food is taken from the hungry, when health care is stripped from the sick, it's not just bad policy, it's evil. It's a moral failure that mocks every ounce of human decency. So we're here because we believe in a different way, right? We believe that compassion is not weakness, that justice is not optional, that solidarity is stronger than any budget cut. We believe that even now, especially, that hope is not naive, it's defiant. And so in the same spirit that empowered prophets and marched with the poor, we believe it's still alive here today and it's on the move. And so I welcome you to this town hall. Welcome to a space where truth is going to be spoken, where lives are seen, and where we refuse to trade our neighbor's well-being for political power. Let's get to work. And I want to bring up someone that has been working long before I arrived on the scene here 10 years ago. This person has given more to this community and has been a justice seeker and has helped us continue this work. And I'm grateful for her presence here today, Commissioner Renee Flowers.
Thank you for the warm welcome. I would be polite, but it's no time for us to be cute. Unfortunately, we've just seen a congressional house pass a budget that does not take you or me in mind. A 4% increase, if not more, for the wealthiest of the wealth, and a 4% decrease for those of us who work every single day to make the wheels turn on what we call the United States of America. We just saw a budget pass that strips Medicaid and Medicare and says that for SNAP benefits, they will only look at children ages 7 and under. That's a travesty. We see an administration where they placed a lady who can't even put in place a verb, let alone a noun or a pronoun, to be over the Department of Education. We saw a mayor from New Jersey attempt to go into an ICE facility to make sure that people were being treated fairly and being treated right, and he was arrested for that. And on top of that, we saw where a congressional person who wanted to make sure that he was safe and secure, that they want to bring charges against her, saying that she was impeding the ICE officers' ability to perform their duties. Well, we see that they are arresting people who are American citizens, who make sure that they go to work every day so that they can put food on the table, so that they can be able to provide for health care, but more importantly, so that they are putting food, goods, and services on the shelves that we shop from. It is a travesty. You are here today because you are saying no more. It's like Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I refuse to give up, and if I have to walk barefoot, I'll walk barefoot, but I'm going to make sure that people are treated like humans. You're here today because just like Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, I am a man and I am somebody. You're here today because you had people right here in this community who sat at the counter of McCrory's to say that everybody deserves to sit at the same counter to get a cup of coffee and a piece of bread to eat. You're here today because you had people like Morris Milton and others who said that they were going to make sure that the sanitation workers right here in St. Petersburg, Florida were treated just like white sanitation workers. You're here today because you are wanting to make sure that police efforts are policing the same no matter where you are, and we don't have another George Floyd 9 minutes and 7 seconds sitting on somebody's neck. That is why you are here today. You are here today for me because of the attempt to erase the history of black people from the annals of time. But I am here to tell you that we will not go quietly into thy deep night. And it doesn't matter how many books you try to take off the shelves, people like me will continue to tell the story of black people. We have culture, we're smart, we're educated, we're friendly, we're loving, but more importantly, we know how to vote. So all I can say to DeSantis and his wife, who took $10 million of Medicaid settlement money and paid lobbyists, you deserve the same justice that you would want to give to someone who looked like me if I did that. And all I can say to the orange-haired man who wants a private plane from Qatar and wants to fly around the world when we have to fly on Spirit, you know, Frontier, little Delta. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more. What you say? All right. Thank you all so very much for being here. And now we'll bring up the next speaker at this time. Joshua is coming up to share a few words with us. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor. It's time.
My name is Josh Wheel. I was the Democratic nominee in our recent special election for U.S. Congress in District 6 last month. In a very short amount of time, 4 months from filing to general election on April 1st, we raised $15 million, we knocked on over 500,000 doors, and we hit that community with a very hard, focused economic message that was based on the fact that Social Security is your money, that you worked for your entire life, it is not theirs, that Medicaid and Medicare are public systems that the American people rely on, and to take from them is to harm the American people, and that our veterans who served deserve to have all of their health care met, no question asked, and to be cutting funds from the VA, to be trying to repeal the PAC Act and say that some things aren't covered or that you have to prove or defend to us why we should care for you with this condition is abhorrent. It's disgusting. And that our veterans have earned everything they get, and we haven't done nearly enough for them since they returned. We brought that message into a district that Donald Trump had won 4 months earlier by 30 points, and that Mike Waltz won by 32 points. In a very short amount of time, we pushed in that margin by 18 points. And more importantly, that message in exit polls had 15% of all Republicans voting for us, and 80% of independent and MPA voters supporting the Democratic candidate for the first time in a district that our party at every level had said was not worth investing in. We have seen that Florida is not a red state. Florida is a neglected state. Florida is a state that has been gerrymandered so badly that in our 8 congressional districts that currently have Democratic U.S. Congress people, Kamala's worst performance in any of those districts last November was plus 44. She won 72-28. They have cut the lines to pack Democrats in as few areas as possible. And our party has chosen that the other 20 out of 28 congressional districts are not worth investing in. But if we concede 70% of the state, we'll continue to have a state like this. We'll continue to have a state that follows just the fundamental fallacy of the Republican Party, right? That we need a smaller central government, and that if you're going to really take care of the people, you have to do it at the state or the local level. Well, Republicans have the state and the local levels. But they don't seem interested in taking care of anyone down here. Republicans have the state, they have a supermajority in Congress, and yet they get Medicaid money from the federal government to ensure that people here have access to health care, and they divert $10 million through PAC after PAC so that way they can put it into political ads to fight against medical marijuana legislation and recreational marijuana legislation that more than 50% of Floridians still voted for. They took our money that was supposed to take care of us and used it for their political sideshows. There is no local. Either they don't care and refuse to use the money at the state and local level, or in most cases, they just can't. Our local governments, our municipalities, and even our state, in so many instances, do not have the budget to run systems that the United States of America, the largest and most resilient economy on earth, can fund. If we are going to take care of people, if we are going to put, God forbid, Americans first, it has to come from Washington. It has to come from a place where they can pass budgets with $1 trillion. Now, I know, it's not actually $1 trillion. I heard Mike Johnson. It's only $987 billion, so don't call it $1 trillion. But look, if I'm at CVS and something rings up as $9.87, I'm gonna say I spent $10, all right? They can have $1 trillion in expected and understood deficit before it starts, while putting $4 trillion in tax cuts for corporations and billionaires. They're fine knowing they don't have the money. They're fine spending money that doesn't exist. It's only an issue when people need health care. It's only an issue when we need mental health services for our veterans. It's only an issue when we ask, why can't we solve 38,000 homeless vets in this country? It seems like a really simple problem to solve. Homelessness is the least complicated problem to solve in the world. People don't have a place to sleep. It doesn't require multiple systems, and give them a place to sleep. Create veterans housing with mental health services on site. Where do you put them? Well, we have an entire map of VA clinics. Put them right across the street from every one. We know how to take care of people. We don't elect people who will. Cuts to Medicaid and Medicare with the healthcare system we have in this country are brutal. They harm our seniors, they harm people on disability, they harm our veterans, they harm... When I met my wife when we were in college, right? We moved back down to Florida in 2009, height of underemployment, and I strung together work tutoring, finding clients and doing math and science tutoring for a couple years, scraping together $500 a week to pay the bills. Right? After a couple years, we were ready to start a family. I got recruited into a graduate program funded by the state because there was a massive shortage in math and science teachers. Right? They got me into a job working in the school district, teaching high school science, and I had health insurance on my own for the first time as an adult. My wife and I were ready to start a family. Right? She got pregnant with our oldest son, David. And when we went to the doctor, they said, you had to have been insured for at least 12 months prior to this pregnancy. It's a pre-existing condition. She had to stop working and take her maternity leave early enough because the $1,400 my paycheck brought home as my starting teacher salary every 2 weeks just get us under the line for her to count for emergency Medicaid. But if she was still working at the diner it was too much, and we wouldn't qualify. So she qualified for emergency Medicaid. And as a result, we only had to pay $5,000 out of pocket instead of $13,000 out of pocket for all of the doctor's appointments and medical care and treatments leading up to the pregnancy and for the birth and delivery. But we couldn't have afforded it. We did the right thing. What you're told to do, you get a job, you get health insurance, you do this. Without emergency Medicaid, we would have been sunk. We barely stayed afloat with it. People rely on these systems. These are here to take care of Americans because there is no reason why in the United States of America in 2025, access or affordability of health care should be something that any American has to worry about. There is no reason why access to housing and ensuring a safe, stable place to live and raise your family is something Americans cannot obtain. Look, we're not going to fix a lot of these problems with the guy in the Oval Office who's there. But right now, we can find people who are willing to fight, people who get it, and we can spend every day from now until next November working to get them into office so we can stop the hemorrhaging, so we can preserve what is left of the infrastructure of this nation, what makes America great, these systems that the American people can rely on. Because if we protect them, if as long as the tiniest shred of a Department of Education, of Medicare, of a Veterans Administration still exists in 2028, then we can start to make them better. Then we can make real change and actually start taking care of people in this country the way we should have been all along. Thank you all. Oh. She was telling me I have 3 more minutes left. It's rough right now, right? It's hard to watch the news. It's hard to believe in a solution. You know, this budget passed by 1 vote. It passed by 1 vote in a year when we have 3 vacant Democratic seats because 3 of our elected representatives, fighting through cancer, fighting through illness and health, had to hold on to their seats and fight till the very end as a last act of defiance and defense against this administration. We've lost 3 dedicated public servants, and we have 3 lost votes that could have stopped this. They are literally killing us. We have got to take back this country. And it starts, I'm dead serious because I know what people think of Florida, right? Like, I get it. We know. We've all met Florida Man, right? He's not just a meme, he's real. Okay. It's here, right? In 2026, next November, if Pennsylvania goes blue, if Virginia goes blue, Ohio goes blue. But y'all, if Florida goes blue, if we can fight, and look, it is going to be the organizing, the fundraising, the investing, the engaging, the getting out, the knocking on doors, it is going to be way harder than it should be. It is far more work than it should have to be. It's an uphill battle. But if we can do all of the work, and we take back this state, if MAGA loses Florida, MAGA's dead. We get to be the ones who do the work. We get to be the ones who take it back. we get to be the ones who win this war. And I'm looking forward to fighting beside all of y'all for the next 18 months. Thank you. Now, it is my pleasure. We've done a couple of these already, where it's almost as if we're on tour right now. But it is my pleasure to introduce to you U.S. Congressman from the 13th District, an incredible man who is committed to this fight to take back our state in 2026, to end the Republican stronghold and obstruction in Tallahassee, and to make sure Floridians can afford to live in Florida for the first time in 6 years. So ladies and gentlemen, round of applause. He told me to introduce him.
No, I'm sorry. Hey guys, little change of plans. Can everybody hold up your placards? Can everyone hold up your placards? Okay. And please welcome David Jolly. Please welcome David Jolly. Please welcome David Jolly. Please welcome David Jolly. David Jolly.
Hey, thank you all very much. I got to ask you, is this a great day for political activism? It is, it is. I don't buy this notion that the Democratic Party's dead, the resistors are dead. They're stronger than ever, folks. I also got to tell you, I love being with Renee Flowers in her hometown. Not only because of her leadership, but boy, can she command a room and sing a little ditty while she's doing it. So thank you. I also want to say thank you to Pastor Oliver. Please give him a round of applause for doing this. Not only for opening the church, but for being a leader of a congregation that truly represents the true teachings of faith. And that's important. That's very important, folks. I speak openly about my personal faith, not to evangelize, it's just part of my identity, part of my upbringing. And it's also why today I'm a proud Democrat. Count us in, and when I say us, my wife and I, we live up in the Clearwater area. We have 2 kids, Cece and Teddy. They're 6 and 4. Every day is a Monday, you can imagine. We just had kindergarten graduation. They put our daughter in the front row for the school to sing, for the class to sing their song. Not because of her voice, but because of her dance moves. She was into it, and that made me a proud dad. Now, I'm not sure she has a future in dance, but I was proud to see the spirit, to see the energy that night. Some of you may have heard this story because I have shared this in other places. You know, our kids notionally have grown up in a household that talks about politics. They're familiar with my work on TV. They're only 6 and 4 though, so it's a little bit of a limited understanding. But we did take our kids to their very first political rally. And it was at the Villages. Imagine a then 5 and 3-year-old at the Villages 2 weeks before Election Day last November. Watch out, they were the belles of the ball at that event. But our young son Teddy, now 4, still marches around the backyard saying, "We're not going back." And when I mention my faith, that's okay, because the Bible says, bring up a child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from you. We're bringing up Democrats in our house up in Clearwater. Again, I will mention my faith a few times. Please understand, not to evangelize whatsoever. Part of leading us back to a place in Florida where everybody is welcome is that we lift up people regardless of who they worship, who they love, what they believe, or whether they choose to be atheist or agnostic, whatever that is. Part of returning us to a place of dignity and equity and parity is recognizing that everybody is welcome in the state of Florida. I happen to be part of the millions of Americans that today consider themselves somewhat church hurt, right? You may have heard that term, maybe not. You struggle with the direction of the evangelical movement in the last 20 or 30 years, particularly in the last decade. The conflict of values that we thought we were brought up with, the fundamental teachings of really most faiths, and in conflict with today's political direction, creates a number of people who are church hurt. But I will tell you, it is liberating, I mean this. One, to hear Pastor Andy's ethos about this congregation, to see a church that welcomes everybody, to see the language used that is inclusive, that lifts people up. And I don't care if you're a member of a church or you worship a God or not, that is who we need to be as a people. It's who we need to be as a people. That is why I'm proud to be a Democrat. Because set aside faith now, those are the values of today's Democratic Party. Today's Democratic Party believes in an economy for all people that lifts up and empowers all people, believes in a government that actually provides services to our veterans, to our seniors, to those in need, and believes in the fundamental teachings of constitutional liberty that allow everyone to live the life that they choose to live. Those are democratic values, much less faith values. So why am I here? By the way, I want to also ask for a round of applause. Ellen called me Thursday at 4:30. I'm in Miami walking into a meeting, and she said, hey, I would like to do a town hall Saturday. I said, this Saturday? She said, yeah, we can do it. I said, well, if you can do it, I'll be there. I want to say thank you to Ellen for pulling this off. To James and to others who are making this possible. And I'll tell you, yesterday Ellen called me to run a show. Yes. Yeah, to Sherry as well. Thank you. That's it. Well, thank you to everyone who participated in making this happen. There is a movement going on across the country right now that is mobilizing people regardless of party registration. Listen, this is really important, folks, regardless of party registration. Now, I will tell you, I'm here today for a few reasons. As I mentioned, first and foremost, because I'm a proud Florida Democrat. I'm a proud Florida Democrat who, in this moment, when others are saying the Democratic Party is dead, the Democratic Party needs to reconsider its values, all that's wrong. Democrats don't need to change, they just need to raise their voices. And I want to be a part of raising our voices. And that's the second reason I'm here, because this is a group that's ready to raise their voices. And what we have seen as communities have raised their voices in the last 100 days is elections like Josh Wheels, where Democrats outperform, a coalition led by Democrats, not just Democrats, as he mentioned, 80% of independents and NPAs, 15% of Republicans. There is a coalition right now being led by the Democratic Party that is demanding change. We're raising our voices and we're changing hearts and minds across the country. This is working. That's the second reason I'm here. And the third reason I'm here is for this. I've been out of politics long enough to tell the truth now. I don't hide the ball. I think we need more authentic and real conversations in politics. We need less spin. We need less work in the refs. So the third reason I'm here is because I am very close to announcing a run for governor of the state of Florida. Thank you. Thank you. Listen, thank you. I mean that, and I sincerely mean that. And I know the comment was made earlier, one of the reasons you were here, I don't remember who said it, was because I happened to be coming. Listen, that's meaningful, folks. But it's meaningful not because, hey, I saw Jolly on MSNBC. Frankly, that cuts both ways. Let's be honest. I mean, my wife's from a small town in central Pennsylvania, and when we're up there and someone says, I saw you on TV, that means they saw a hate reel on Fox News. That's not good news when they say that. But it's meaningful because it means we're part of a trust relationship, and we're part of a coalition. And part of taking back Tallahassee for the Democrats, whether I'm a candidate or not, I can tell you what has to happen this cycle is something has to look and feel different. Because if we just see another typical candidate campaign, raise money, put them in a box, go on TV, we're losing. We're losing. This has to feel different on the inside and the outside. Part of that is the candidate just has one role of a million roles in that campaign, and we're all doing something just as important. The candidate's no more or less important than the organizer, than the person making the calls, than the person writing the check. It is a true coalition. And we have to be in communities where we haven't been before. We have to have conversations that we haven't had before. We have to be able to, yes, where Democrats have won, we have to win by more. But where we've lost, we have to lose by less. That means going into faith communities and having conversations about why we believe the values of today's Democratic Party better reflect the teachings of Jesus Christ. We're not going to get them all. We're not going to get them all. But we have to have those authentic conversations. We have to say we're going to be the party that is committed to reducing gun violence in the state of Florida. But we cannot be afraid to go to the responsible gun owner. I say that very specifically, and say, look, we want to have universal and comprehensive background checks, red flag laws, raise the age. We want to ban the transfer of assault weapons. We want to make sure that every transfer of a weapon, including family members, is registered. We want to explore licensing and insurance. We want to do all these things, responsible gun owner, because if we reduce gun violence in the state of Florida, it's going to save your kid just as much as it's going to save mine. That's different language. That's hard language to go to a responsible gun owner and say, I don't think you're the problem. The problem is unfettered, unchecked access to firearms, lax laws that overlook storage requirements, and frankly, a Republican Party that doesn't care. They don't care. And we have to have a different conversation, which is, it is not good enough when kids are getting shot in schools, when people can't feel safe in a grocery store or in their place of worship, for Republicans to say, well, this is just collateral damage of the Second Amendment. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Fundamental rights are not absolute rights. It's true with speech, it's true with religion, and it's true with the Second Amendment as well. We can protect responsible gun owners just as we protect ourselves by having a different language. We can go into ag communities in North Florida and say, listen, because Ron DeSantis wants to play theater with migrants, and because he wants to punch down and divide, your labor markets are tighter. Your costs are going up. And we can be the party that understands that. We can go, as I was in Zephyr Hills a few weeks ago, someone came to me and said, the last time a Democrat was in this hall, it was Lawton Childs. Think about that. We can go there. But none of that requires changing fundamental democratic values. Not one bit. I don't buy it when, forgive me, the TV analysts or leading Democratic politicians across the state say somehow we have to change. No, we don't. No, we don't. We just have to meet voters exactly where they're at in this moment and talk about democratic values and how we are going to fight for them. We are in a crisis right now. We're in a crisis. I believe we're in a constitutional crisis. When the President of the United States says to the Congress, I don't care about the laws you passed, I don't care about the budgets you enacted, I'm not going to spend it, I'm not going to listen to you. When the President says to the courts, I'm not going to follow your orders, and when he says to individuals across the country, including our black and brown brethren, your due process doesn't matter, that's a crisis. That is a crisis. We don't have to wait to be told. We know it. We know it. What creates the constitutional crisis is that the Congress has collapsed. The Congress has the ability to hold a president accountable. The Republican Congress, to your point, has collapsed. That's right. Because we've seen malfeasance by a president before. That doesn't create a constitutional crisis if the Congress rises up and the courts rise up. That's just how the founders envisioned accountability to work. The constitutional crisis is because the Republican Congress has collapsed. But we also have a crisis. We also have a crisis with our national identity. We have a crisis that is a heart and soul crisis right now. In some ways it's big, right? If you were trying to tear apart the country, either from without or from within, there are a few things you would do. You would break our security alliances with the West, the long-held security alliances that protect us safe. You would empower our enemies. That's what this administration has done already in the first 150 days. You would also disrupt our domestic economy, create economic uncertainty. Folks, every time the president gets on Truth Social, people feel the anxiety, not just in their gut, but in their wallet. What's he going to do next? And the third thing you would do is you would break the ability of a federal government to deliver services to its people. That's happening right now. That's a crisis. That's a crisis. Now, what did we see this week? A further crisis of our national identity, of the heart and soul of who we can be. The tax bill that just passed, by many estimations, represents the greatest upward transfer of wealth in the history of the country. But let's unpack a little bit of the language and let's deliver this message straight to voters. Because I'm of the generation, and I'm looking around the room, I'm guessing most of you are as well. When we talked about cuts to Medicaid in the 70s and 80s, that kind of meant something different, right? The Medicaid population, as we were coming of age, was very different. That's not the case anymore. Over 40% of childbirths in the state of Florida are funded through the Medicaid program. Childbirth care, over 40% in the state of Florida, is funded and provided for by Medicaid, including 12 months of postpartum health care and mental health care for the mom. That child ultimately becomes a Medicaid recipient for their infant health care. Long-term care for seniors. Over 60% nationally of long-term care for seniors is funded through the Medicaid program. Many of you know this. It's a lived experience within your own family or your own community. An elderly person in their final days, or perhaps they suffer from a neurodegenerative condition over several years. Eventually, that person ends up with not a single dime to their name in a skilled nursing facility where Medicaid is supporting the delivery of critical health services at the end of their life. Medicaid cuts are real to all of us right now. That means, and this was a provision of the budget, that also means that the minimum staffing requirements, nurse staffing requirements at some of these long-term care facilities are going to get eliminated. So that means a reduction of long-term care for our seniors and a reduction of nurse staffing in those centers. Folks, that's real. That's not politics, that's real. That's real life. That's real life. When we talk about being a party or being a country that can lift everybody up, and we're talking about cutting services for newborns and for people in their last days. This is bigger than just math. This is about the heart and soul of a country that's going in the wrong direction. It is. It also, by the way, explodes our debt and deficits. There is one political statement that none of us should ever tolerate, ever, and that's that the Republican Party is the party of fiscal responsibility. It is an absolute bald-faced lie. It is an absolute lie. And you know what I love about being a Democrat? We get to accept math. We get to accept science. We get to accept academia. We get to accept diversity in real life and celebrate all of it. We get to accept public health and vaccines. Imagine that. So look, we are here to mobilize around the direction of the country to say we are going in the wrong direction. This tax bill is wrong. But as I have shared with many of you, and I know many of you agree, our way back as Democrats nationally and in the state of Florida does not simply happen when voters look at what we're against. They've got to know what we're for. They've got to know what we're for. They've got to. They've got to. It just so happens Republicans have shown the world what they're for. And now we get to draw a contrast. We are a party that believes that the economy should work for everybody. We are a party that believes that government can provide services to its veterans and its seniors and to those suffering from food insecurity. We are a party that believes, as I said, regardless of who you love or who you worship or where you came from, we're going to lift you up and we're going to celebrate you and recognize your contributions to our economy and to our culture. We are a party that recognizes that regardless of who you are, we're going to fight for access to affordable health care, to quality education, to housing. We can be a party that says, you know what? We celebrate public education. We think we should spend more money for more schools with more teachers who are paid more, who are allowed to teach. And that we're going to get politicians out of the public school classrooms just like we're going to get them out of the doctor's offices. I'm not afraid for our 6-year-old and 4-year-old child to be exposed to a broad diversity of thought, to a broad diversity of academia, to literature, to culture. I want them to be exposed to that. Because when they're exposed to that, it makes them richer, brighter, smarter, more capable people who also, by the way, will become more loving and empathetic people as well. At home, my wife Laura and I can orient our family around the value set that we think is right for us, and we can prepare them to make determinations about their value set when they reach the age of majority. That's how this should work. I don't get this big government conservatism. I'll also tell you this. We're in a community here in a church that I know will understand this. Let's just be honest. Don't say gay did not happen in Tallahassee because too many teachers had a photo on their desk of a traditional marriage. It happened because Republican politicians were terrified that kids were getting exposed to same-sex relationships. That is an implicit bias. That is homophobic and it's wrong. We can be a party that says investing in the environment is right for our custodianship and stewardship of the environment. That climate science and climate change is real. It should not be outlawed. But we can also say that the import of it is not just in our stewardship of the environment, but it is also in addressing long-term resiliency of people who actually want to live in Florida, be able to drink clean water and breathe clean air, and oh, by the way, support an environmental economy that brings people here every day. We have an ocean economy, an environmental economy that fuels jobs, fuels a tourist economy. Here in the state of Florida, we can be the party that fights for that. We can be the party that says, as Washington is cutting services to our veterans, the state will step in and provide additional services that are now getting cut. We can be the party that says we're going to invest in science, we're going to invest in public health. We can be the party that says we are going to dismiss all of these trustees of the colleges and universities that Ron DeSantis has appointed and return people who know how to teach. We can be the party that says we're going to dismiss DeSantis' appointees to the water boards, the water commissions, the public service commissions. We're going to restore science, we're going to restore facts, we're going to restore data, and we're going to let the experts do what experts do and get the politicians out of the process. Now, I want to point something out to you because everything I just said about the party we can be in the state of Florida, I did not for one moment mention Donald Trump. Think about that. Think about that. I mean it. We got to be able to do a couple things at the same time. We've got to raise our voices as we do. Go to the Congresswoman's office. Go to the Senator's office. Stand on the street corner. Go to the Tesla dealerships. Fight corruption in politics. Fight the direction that Donald Trump wants to take us. We've got to be able to do that. But to return the state of Florida with a coalition capable of returning democratic values, a race for governor cannot be about Donald Trump. It is not about Donald Trump. It is not. Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis provide the natural contrast to our values. We have to go into communities across the state, build community, invest with a broad and deep coalition where we listen more than we talk, where we build a coalition that says, I will begin to trust you as you begin to trust me, as we learn to advocate for each other, and as we return to Tallahassee a value set and a view and vision of freedom that people really appreciate. The affordability crisis is the #1 crisis of every Floridian, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. What I say about this race is if you like your affordability crisis, you can keep it, because Republicans have given it to you. If you want to change that, you elect more Democrats. We have a plan to drive down the cost of access to housing by radically reforming our property insurance market. I personally think we need a state catastrophic fund to remove hurricane and natural disaster perils from the private market. It'll cut your property insurance by 60%. Where the Surfside legislation made condo ownership unaffordable and trapped many people, particularly seniors, I'm not afraid to say the state should step in where private markets fail. Yes, we needed the additional public safety legislation. It's paramount. One of the primary roles of government is to address public safety. But where government creates that economic burden, it also needs to create economic relief. We can provide a 10 or 20-year amortized zero-interest loan that is state-backed, that is transferable from seller to seller, that allows seniors and other condo owners to stay in their condos and also be able to sell it if they need to sell it. It's okay for the government to step in where private markets fail. It's failed in property insurance, it's failed in health insurance. We can be the party that says, if Washington wants to give us money for Medicaid expansion, we're going to take it. We're going to take it. If Washington wants to give us money to reduce congestion on our roads by allowing us to build light rail and other modes of transportation, we're going to take it. And guess what? If Washington wants to give us, as they did, I believe $80 million for refugee resettlement programs in the state of Florida, we're going to take it. Ron DeSantis sent that money back. Folks, the refugee resettlement program is one of the purest forms of immigration, one of the most beautiful reflections of American ideals. People who are truly fleeing risk, who go through a year or two vetting process, and what we are offering them is housing security, job security, and food security while they rebuild life and opportunity in the state of Florida. It's not just politically stupid for Ron DeSantis to send that money back, it's morally wrong. We can be the party that says, you know what, we're tough on crime. If you commit a crime, whether you were born here, whether you migrated here, or whether you're a Tallahassee politician stealing $10 million from the Medicaid program, you're going to face charges. But we can also be the party that says we are going to embrace and lift up our immigrant community and recognize their contributions to our culture and our economy. We can do both. Republicans cannot do both. Republicans cannot do both. I know we want to get to some Q&A, and I know Ellen's freaking out, and I know there's a day of mobilizing ahead, and I apologize for this, but it's air-conditioned in here, and it's not out there. I want to close a little bit with this. I mentioned my personal faith. It's something I do talk about. And I really mean this. The coalition that is threaded together right now, it's bigger than policy, folks. It's a coalition that says, over the last 8 years under Ron DeSantis, over the last 10 years under MAGA, they're dividing us. And the only way they win is to divide us. We want a coalition that unites people. We want a coalition that recognizes whether you are a conservative evangelical, whether you are an agnostic or an atheist, whomever you love, whomever you worship, whatever life you've come from, whatever liberties you cling to, we're that coalition. Because we're a coalition of goodwill and good spirit that lifts people up and trusts people and believes in people. And policies flow from that culture. Because that's how we get to policies that ensure affordable health care, that we don't cut health care for our seniors, that we don't cut health care for expectant moms, that we don't cut health care for the disabled. Those are policies that flow from our culture. I know we can do this. I know we can do this. I have been involved as a consultant in probably 30 or 40 races. I've only been a candidate in 4 or 5. Many of you probably voted against me. That's okay. It took me a while to learn the lessons. By the way, my wife registered as a Democrat 8 months before I did, which just proves women lead the way. I say this, that I've been involved in races for this reason. This is the best shot in Florida we've had in 30 years. It may be the only shot we have in the next 20. Now, I don't know that I'm willing to resign over to that, right? A hard-fought race where we come up short, but Florida's now a 3-point race and not a 3-point state, not a 14-point state. Folks, that means the White House is competitive in 2028, and we've changed the direction of Florida. But I will tell you, I would not have made the decision that I'm prepared to make about this governor's race if I did not know there's a pathway for this coalition to win. I know there is. We're in the midst of a historic change election, a generational change election. We saw the numbers in Josh's special election. We're seeing the numbers across the country. We have an open seat governorship. Voters perform differently in governor's races than other races. It's how we see Democrat Andy Beshear in Kentucky. It's how we saw Steve Bullock in Montana. It's how we saw Gina Raimondo in Rhode Island in a red wave still win as a Democrat. Governor's races are just different. We have a way to win this race. And so I close all of my comments with this. Should we decide to get into this race, and I believe we will, and I believe it'll happen very soon, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do, the very first thing I'm going to ask you to do, is believe. 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 Not only believe that we can win, but believe that we can bring back to Florida a coalition and leadership that fights for everyone, that lifts up everyone, that restores dignity to everyone, that restores an economy for all people, that actually addresses the economic crisis of people's personal households, their personal economies, that ensures access to health care and education, makes public education in the state of Florida the greatest in the world. Believe that we have a coalition that can do that. Believe. That's the only thing I'm going to ask as we step out together, that we believe and we believe together. And here's the most beautiful part about this. You already do. You already do. You already do. You would not be here today, and I would not be here today if we didn't already believe. In the face of the crisis that we're facing, the despair that we sometimes feel, what's the president going to do next? How bad are our culture wars going to get? What are Republicans in Tallahassee really going to do next? In the face of all that, it is easy to give up. It is easy to leave. But you haven't given up, and you haven't left, because you already believe. I believe too. And I believe there are enough people across the state of Florida that believe next November we can change the direction of the state of Florida and change the direction of the country. I do. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Ellen or James, we're going to do Q&A, or Ellen runs a tight ship. This might be quick. So
I'm Michelle Passoff. I was the producer of Voice Your Vote 2020, the music video. How you doing? I had other things to do this weekend, but when I saw you were going to be here, I came out because you're talking so much sense. But the problem is we're living in a paradigm that makes none. So my fear is that you're talking inside of elections and things like that that are normal, but we're not living in a place that's normal. So my fear is these systems that we once operated in to vote and get our voices heard aren't going to exist by the time you get up for election. And that's my fear. And not only to bring people out to vote, but I was seeing an image on the television, I think it was in Serbia, where there were so many people out on the street, not a few people on a corner here and there and there. But, you know, how do you bring out millions and millions and millions to say, stop? You know, we're not going to have this. We're not going to take the United States of America and make it Nazi Germany. How do we do that?
Yeah, thank you. I hate it when politicians or candidates kind of put a nice varnish on things and say it's all going to be okay. I'm not here to say that, and I'm here to actually share that anxiety. Are we running out of time to fix things? Here's what I do know though. December, January, this here in this room would not have happened. Right? December and January, we were all flatlined after the November election. We were. The despair was real. We've picked ourselves up. And I promise you this, from my perspective, look, in the last 2 months, I've maybe done 14 or 15 of these. When we had 400 people in Palm Coast, when we had 300 people in Orange County, when Bradenton had 300 people, when Sun City Center had 300 people, in Naples last week, on the courthouse steps at 95 degrees, there were 600 people. And someone stood up and said, thank you for remembering a Democratic vote in Collier County counts as much as a Democratic vote in Broward County. When we see the results in Josh Wheel's special election, this is working. This is working. Now, we cannot protect against the disenfranchisement that is occurring at the hands of Republicans right now through voter suppression and other measures. We don't have the tools to do that, which is why we've got to build a coalition that strengthens and strengthens and strengthens. The good news is the trend is our friend. We have to keep this up. If we stop, we've lost. If we've stopped, we've lost. And so we have to take this movement into next August and next September with the same energy we have right now. That is the hard work. The fatigue is real. But when I said, I don't think we've seen a cycle like this in 30 years and we may not see it again, I really mean that. I really mean that. Look, we saw in 2018, I remember covering the election live on set as the blue wave was rolling in. And all of my Democratic colleagues at the table on MSNBC were lamenting and gnashing their teeth and, oh, this is so terrible, this is so terrible. And I said, guys, you're winning. You're winning. This is working. And in 2018, we saw a blue wave that kicked Republicans out of the Congress and gave Democrats the ability to hold the president accountable. I think we are easily in that environment right now. One of the main reasons that Vice President Harris lost last November is too many Democrats stayed home.
Yes.
Too many Democrats stayed home. That's not this cycle. That's not this environment. I'm going to try to keep my answers tight. I know we got to run, but this is why I said we've got to build a movement and believe. I think we're in that cycle, and I think we've got a shot.
I think it's not Democrat or Republican, it's American.
I agree. That's right.
Great. We have a
Josh
question.
just did it.
We have a question right over here.
This is really has to be a very grassroots thing across parties because there's disaffected Republicans as well. My concern is how well are we going to do, or are we doing within the party, because there's a lot of stress, fighting, it seems to people like myself. I'm a political hog. I've seen you zillions of times. I love the pictures on your wall, by the way. Haven't seen them in a while. But I guess my concern is I feel as if there's a voice coming on from some of the young people. They're in their 20s. And there's certainly a voice among people like me who are far away from their 20s. But parents, and I have children who are parents and grandchildren, I feel as if they're kind of not in the game. That they're not forming, or maybe they don't have an IRP membership or whatever. They have no connection like we do, like we're all old or all we get Medicaid, Medicare, or whatever. And I don't know how to even move my own kids sometimes. Now they're going to go to the polls, you know. But in the meantime, they're the people who have kids in our schools. I'm a school person. And as if I were 45 years old and still had children, like I did, I either would have left the state or got my kids in private school rather than subject them to what's happening in public school here. But where are those younger, the 30s and 40s? How do we get them engaged? What's the pathways? Do we know how engaged they are or not? Because I think a lot of people are sitting back thinking, well, wait, we're all going to vote against Trump people. Yeah. And that'll take care of it. I'm not convinced of that.
It's a great question. A couple things here. One, there are not enough Democratic votes in the state of Florida to win the governorship or a statewide race. We have to start with that principle. And we've got to recalibrate a little bit. We've got to turn out more Democrats. We've got to turn out every Democrat, right? But there are not enough Democratic votes in the state of Florida. So this coalition has to look different. That means going into communities that I said we haven't gone into before, but it also means for first-time voters, getting back those voters. Donald Trump won a higher propensity of first-time voters than we've seen a Republican do in many cycles. And so we have to speak the language of those voters who are ultimately suspicious of the two-party system. Right? The NPAs in the state of Florida are the largest growing bloc. It's about 30% of the vote. Many of them, it's overrepresented by young people who distrust the two major parties. And so part of the hard work of a campaign, whatever that campaign is building a true coalition's footprint where we empower voices that look and feel like different communities, whether it's age, socioeconomic, demographic, regional. We've got to have those folks on the coalition, which is also why we have to start 14, 16, 18 months out. We can't wait until 6 weeks before an election and then go to people and say, hey, we want to talk to you. We have to start now. I met with the Council of Black Pastors in Orlando about a month ago, and I said, one of the things we can't do is come to you 6 weeks before an election. And they said, 6 weeks? No one's come here before they've declared their candidacy. And I said, well, that's why I'm here. Because not to ask for your political support, but to start a relationship so that in 14 months we're trusting each other so that we can lead our mutual communities together towards a coalition. That's true of young folks as well. What is the language that resonates? How are we addressing their personal economic affordability crisis when it comes to housing, to car insurance, to jobs, whatever it might be? Look, the gig economy was celebrated for its flexibility. Now it just means people have to have 6 jobs to get by, right? What does that language look like? And then how do we deploy the digital tools to touch every voter across the state? That is a massive, in a statewide race, almost $100 million enterprise in 16 months to touch voters. But it is the hard work of a winning campaign. Your question is spot on. Sure. Look, let me jump on this education thing for a moment because this is both principle and tactical, okay? We need to lead by saying we are going to reinvest and celebrate public education in the state of Florida and make it the greatest in the world. Because too many families know that they don't have access to a great public education environment in their community through no fault of the public education system or the teachers or the administrators, but because they've been starved of resources and there aren't enough teachers and there are handcuffs on how they teach. Because the buildings are too old and haven't been invested in. It doesn't look and feel like the community or like when we walk into any other community across the state. And so people have lost confidence as a result of 30 years of Republicans attacking the public education system. So we lead with saying we're going to invest and celebrate public education. But we're going to dramatically reform the voucher system. Because when Republicans made it universal, they gave away the plot. They gave away the plot. So we can start by saying we're going to bring back means testing to the voucher system to make sure it's only for families who need it. when in the first year of universal vouchers, 70% of family recipients were already in private schools the year before. It wasn't about helping them, it was about directing money to the private schools. And guess what those private schools did? They raised their tuition by $6,000 or $8,000. So now they took money from the state and from the families. And guess what? These schools don't have to provide the same services that our public schools do. If a first grader can't read in a voucher school, they get kicked out. In public school, they get an IEP. So let's say if you're a private school receiving vouchers, you have to provide the same services that our public schools provide. Here's why that's important. Because you know the families that have grown really angry with the voucher system? They're Republican performing families. They are Republican performing families that for 20 or 30 years thought, I love this voucher system. But now it's created a system where I still can't afford my school. My kids aren't getting the services they need. And when I go to look for a community public school, I can't find one because it's been defunded. And they're pissed off. And so many of them are looking at homeschooling now. This is a moment where education is in crisis, and there is only one side of the aisle to blame, and it's Republicans. Democrats have an opportunity on that issue this cycle. I'm sorry, I went long on that.
Okay. I actually don't have a question. I have a response. Aside from the fact that thank you for being here, because we don't get town halls. So being able to listen to us as a community, this is very appreciative. Your comment on believe, I think is insufficient. I think it should be go with passion. Do something more active like that. Because each and every one of us, I grew up in the red state of South Dakota. Let me tell you about red. But I've lived in 9 states across the country, and the thing that people like passion. People like to be part of the group that's leading. People like to be in what's popular. That's that whole, if 10 other people would do it, would you? But you want to be that popular person. You want to be in that passion. So every single one of us, not just David, not just Josh, not anybody at the upper levels, number one, hold the Republicans accountable, hold those in power accountable, but each and every one of us needs to talk to everybody else. We need to put signs up in our yards. We need to be vocal. We need to make a point. We need to stand up for each other. Do not let someone take your neighbor. You don't know that they're official. Look for that warrant. But stand up and be strong and be bold, because that's what's going to drive this passion. That's what's going to drive this movement. And that's what's going to bring it back to us.
That's right, you're hired. You're hired. Listen, on high attendance Sundays in church, some of you grew up with this, the message was each one reach one. Each one's got to reach one. My wife has started reaching Republican voters, not just bringing them over to this idea of a Democratic governor, but asking them to change their voter registration. She's changed 5 in the last 2 weeks. And she's got this little saying, come party with us. Come party with us. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi. I am with a group of parents here that have special needs adults in our families. And I think it's a population that falls at the wayside in terms of education, opportunity, programs, and Medicaid waiver funding. And I really want that to be the forefront in anyone who's going to be running to run this state, because they need and they deserve all the opportunities of anyone else here. And that's what my fear is for my daughter. She's 48, she goes to a program, she loves it, but my biggest fear is that she's going to lose that funding. And what does she do?
Thank you for that question. Thank you. We have a neighbor in a similar situation, a special needs adult child, now maybe 28, 30 years old. They're recently retired. Their life plan has to be about what happens to their adult son, right? She, a fierce tiger mom, like I know you are as well, I can tell, who just fought with the Social Security Administration for about 9 months, going down there, waiting in the lobby, knocking on the door, not taking no for an answer, and finally got the answer she needed last week. And we celebrated together. But it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. And I think there are a couple things in play. A lot of these cuts, these Doge cuts, and now Tallahassee wants Doge cuts as well, are cutting the navigators to help you through the system, right? Who here thinks that Donald Trump would know how to go online and apply for Social Security? Right? Look, my mom is still with us. She's 84 in Pasco County. She has to drive down to the Social Security Administration office if she has a question. She doesn't do online banking. She still has to drive down to talk to her banker about it. So first and foremost, it is having offices staffed in more communities that can provide the services. Secondly, it's about loosening the rules to simply get the assistance there that is needed to provide not just for the care now, but for the opportunity for at least the independent living that is going to need to be supported when parents of this generation are gone. And then finally, the funding that makes sure those services are provided for. There are some things that, as hard as the issue is, come down to a very simple answer, which are budgets or values. Budgets are values. We're seeing that in this tax bill right now. When they think that tax cuts for the wealthy are more important than the delivery of health care services to those with special needs or special abilities, to our seniors in their final days, or to an expectant mother, that is a disgusting display of Republican values. We're a party that says no, and we're going to do something differently if you trust us to lead the state.
Mr. Jolly, I've been following you on MSNBC now for, I think, several years and watching your growth. And when I was headed here this morning, I thought, I bet you this guy's going to announce for governor. And you did. So I'd just like to say thank you for your courage, your leadership, and I think we can do this. I believe. I really do.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have one up front.
Representative Jolly, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm part of a group that's been using strategies that have been replicated across the country, specifically in addressing local school board meetings. We've attended every school board meeting here in the county for the last 3 years. It's worked, as you know, and Moms for Liberty has lost 70% of the races they run in across the country over the last year. So you have that organization behind you. I would like you, if you don't mind, just to speak to a couple more of what you believe are the most important messages when it comes to defending public education. I appreciate it.
One, we need to invest more in public education, but I think that is different than just saying we need to spend more, right? When I use terms like we need to celebrate public education, I think we also need to communicate to families that the greatest access to excellence in academia, in the trades, in the arts, are in our public schools. They're in our public schools. Listen, I will share with you, given the age of our children, we have them in a little church school right now. It is right for our family right now. It probably won't be, say, at about the point of third grade. We're watching very closely the educational standards and the comparative metrics of reading and other metrics for young children. Fortunately, we are in a place where we are able to spend every day with our children reading and investing in them. That's not every child, right? We recognize that. But at some point, and a lot of them are faith-based, not all of them, but many of these private schools do not offer the same access to excellence in academics, trades, and the arts that our public schools do. And so that is more than just saying, look, the traditions of the past, the Democratic-Republican fight, I think, around public education. The Republican Jeb Bush language was, we're fighting for parents, we're fighting for choice. And somewhere Democrats looked like they were just fighting for bricks and mortar of public schools. They were fighting to protect teacher jobs, right? We need to fight for excellence in public education and talk about the fact that you will get a better education in our public schools than you'll get in our private schools right now. And we need to be proud of that. And we need to take that message to the angry Republican performing voucher family and say, listen, let me tell you about what your kid could get in a public school. Because in a public school, you're going to get great trigonometry teachers and incredible art teachers and music teachers. And if your kid decides to pursue the trades, you're going to get access to the trades through the Pinellas County schools. Renee knows that as well as anybody. You're not going to get any of that in a lot of these other schools. And so I think the celebration of public education and the argument that we can be the state It has the greatest public education system in the world because it grows capable people who will invest in Florida's economy, who will grow Florida's economy as we build an economy around them that keeps them here. There is not another platform that does it. It is not our private schools. Now, that does not mean attacking the families that choose private schools. That's fine for them. And in some ways, we've pushed people in that direction, Republicans have, because of the way we've treated public education in the past. That stops now. I know your history, and I appreciate your history, and you're a champion in this space, and I would be proud to fight alongside you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, but before we get to it, I just want to let you know that if you are in this area and you are organizing for justice, one of the things we decided to do as a church the first time this person was elected, to give you free meeting space to the organizing for justice here, okay? You just let us know.
Hi there. First, thanks for coming. Thanks for running for governor. You make a tremendous amount of sense. And you're right, we do need to build a coalition. One of my big pet peeves with Democrats is their ability to communicate or not communicate, maybe. And I'm curious, why in putting together this sign did somebody make the choice to say Republicans? Because it's going to be hard to build a coalition when it's not Republicans, it's Republican Congress people.
Now listen. So I'm not going to render judgment on the sign maker because they might be in this room. But listen, this is very important. Language is important, particularly in a space where sometimes elections aren't decided so much about the nuances of policy. It's about whether or not I can build trust and community with this coalition and the person whose name is on the ballot. And so you will hear me talk often about Republican politicians, about Tallahassee politicians, because it gives space to Republicans who may not agree with the direction that their own elected leaders are taking them. And I think that's important, right? Even as we struggle. Look, many of us probably have MAGA family members. I do. Wow, for a few years, those feelings are real because it reflects a very different value orientation. And it is easy to feel the anger and the division and to let division win the day. That's just real, okay? That's real. I think that's common among this coalition. Can we find brotherhood and sisterhood with Republicans in this moment when we see the direction that Republican politicians are taking us? We have to. We have to. And we have to give them room to have a conversation. But ultimately, I think our argument is the most convincing of all, regardless of your party registration. If we want to protect your kids from gun violence, we want you to be able to afford to retire in the state of Florida and not have to leave. We want you and your family to have access to health care, to a quality education, to an economy that keeps them here in the state. We want to make sure the environment is something you can live in for the next 20 years in the state of Florida. And we can do all that together. What we have seen is if you drop the reflexive partisanship, we agree on that value set. That doesn't mean that every voter is available to us. They're not. But what we do know is there's a higher propensity of Republicans available to us right now. And if we give them reason to believe and to trust with us and to show them respect, to prove that we'll invest in their community just as much as they invest in ours. Look, the last example I'll lead with, we haven't touched on it. I'm for the full codification of the Roe-Casey framework to protect reproductive freedom. Okay? That is a constitutional conviction I have. It's not how I started my politics. Many of you know that. That is true. That's been a journey for me, but it is where I am and have been for a while. I can sit, though, in an evangelical church pew and believe that and defend that constitutional protection, just as I tell that person worshiping beside me that I'm going to fight for their religious liberty, and I'm going to tell them that we will protect your ability and your empowerment to evangelize and win hearts and minds about your biblical truths, because liberty belongs to everybody. those voters are available to us. But to your point, if we use language that pushes them away, we'll never get them in the door. We're going to get a little personal here. I shared this story with Pastor Andy previously. My father was a pastor for maybe 60 years in a Southern Baptist church in the 60s, 70s, 80s in Georgia and Florida. I don't need to tell you what type of conservative environment that was. You all know it, right? When I first got into Congress, I was one of, I believe, only 3 Republican politicians that supported marriage equality. It turned into a scandal on my side of the aisle. Without going into too much detail, 40 or 50 pastors and faith leaders in this county sent an open letter denouncing me, published it in the Tampa Bay Times. Those moments were real. My father was still living at the time. He asked to see me. We sat and we had dinner. And he said, you know, son, in 50 or 60 years of being in the pulpit, I never once gave a sermon on abortion, reproductive freedom, LGBT issues, never once. And that shocked me. Because I thought growing up in his home, he may have done that 3 or 4 times a year. Because I knew his beliefs and his values and how he lived them. But he said to me, son, the moment I would give a sermon like that, it would give people reason to leave. It would turn people away. It would not give them reason to be a part of our community. And whatever your faith is, the fundamental teachings of the Christian faith are about the crucifixion and the salvation offered through the belief in the Jesus Christ that we call our God. That is almost the only issue that matters. And the moment you begin to push people away, you've lost the opportunity to reach them and to build community. Maybe I share that just to share a little bit about my own orientation and upbringing, but I think the principle applies to what you just said. If our focus remains on how we're going to invest in everybody, how we're going to lift everybody up, we're going to return dignity and respect and deliver the responsible administration of the government that they spend their taxpayers on, and we shut out all the noise and the cable TV and say, we're not going to play that game, we're just going to talk about working together, we can win the governorship next November. I know we can. Thank you all for being here.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to let you know we do have an after action, but first we have watermelon, hot dogs, cookies, all kinds of treats for y'all right here in the lobby. And then we're heading over to Anna Paulina Luna's. I think we have the Cameron is putting up there we go. There's the address. And also, if you'll look at your placards, if you'll look at your placards, there's a QR code that you can go to, and we'd appreciate it if you check us out. Thank you.
All right, we're just going to repeat that one more time for those who want to stay in touch as we move around the state of Florida. The bottom of your placard is a QR code. Make sure you fill that out if you have not already. Go there. We're going to keep you informed. The bottom of your placard, a QR code. That's how we stay in touch with you. That's how you stay in touch with us. Thank you.